Hi everyone and welcome. Today I have a couple art cards and let's get started. I started in this case with some standard cardstock, even though I am adding some distress ink, in this case old paper. I don't really care how smooth it looks, and actually the more grungy and not smooth it looks, the better. But not much of it's going to show, and so I thought I'd just use cardstock instead of my more expensive Bristol Smooth. So I'm using, they're 3x5, so they're not artist trading cards. They're slightly bigger, but you can definitely make them the size of artist trading cards. So I'm doing the background, and then I'm doing a smaller piece that's going to go on top of them, and I'm doing that in the same color, and you'll see why. It's going to make sense in the end. But I do have a pretty much of a plan. Some of it's still open, but pretty much of a plan. I have to apologize for my camera shaking, and have a new setup, and I'm still trying to figure out how to have my camera so it doesn't shake. So I'm gonna start with the top layer, and I'm going to stamp some text on it. I have this big text block from, I think it's from Ledger Script. I think that's what it's called, from Stampers Anonymous Tim Holtz. And I'm doing it in the Archival Pebble Beach because I didn't want it to be in your face. I kind of wanted it to kind of recede, and so the Pebble Beach does a really good job of that. So I stamped the whole second top card, and I'm going to reverse it and stamp, or punch holes. And really the only hole punch other than a regular hole punch is a happy planner punch. So I wish I had it to where it would look like, it's ripped out, paper's ripped out of a binder, but I don't have anything like that. Guess I could have just ripped out a piece of paper. Maybe I'll do that in a future one. But so I'm adding some distressed ink to the edges in Vintage Photo. That's my go-to. And now I'm gonna start putting it together. Now for the background, I am going to be covering most of the back cards with book paper. I have some old book paper, and so I'm going to be covering most of it with that. And it doesn't have to be anything perfect. I just kind of ripping it, and how it is how it is. And I'm using my glue stick because to me that is a much better smooth application than glue. I think glue just ends up bubbling. And so I'm going to just use my glue stick and glue those pieces down. I'm going to trim them to size. And so now I'm going to take my pieces and I'm going to give them a that's right, I forgot. I add some water to the top pieces just to kind of give them a little more distress. So I'm adding some misting and flicking and just kind of removing a little bit of the ink. I had forgotten I did that. And there you can see the difference in the sizes, so you can kind of estimate what each size has to be. And per usual for me, I will add a layer of Collage medium down just to seal the paper. Otherwise, anything you put on it just soaks right in, and I don't know, to me it just looks so much better if there's a sealant on top of it, just to have everything sit on top instead of soaking in. And I use my catalyst spreader to just take out any excess and make it smooth. So I'm also going to add the Collage medium to the top card. And I want to make sure they're dry. So now I'm going to add some distress ink. I'm using the colors picked Rasberry and Abandoned Coral. And I'm just kind of smooshing them down. I'm trying to keep the colors a little bit separate so they're both on there. And before I do a second coat, I just want to make sure the first coat is dry so it doesn't smear in. It will just be added to. And if the colors start getting mixed together, then you can reapply. And so I've decided just to add more of the picked Rasberry. And I'm going to use my brush and just add some splatters. And I'm going to also splatter the top cards. and give them a dry. And because I have picked raspberry on there, I'm going to add a little bit of the Distress Spritz in picked raspberry. And I'm not going to spray it. I'm just going to remove the nozzle and add some splatters. But I want to still make sure that all the ingredients are flowing instead of just stuck on the bottom. So that's why I was shaking it real good. And so I'm just adding some splatters to both cards, or both the back and the top, and then had to make sure it was dry. And now I can start assembling. And these, I'm using some florals that are from a Etsy download. And so I printed them and fussy cut them out. I add a little bit of Distress ink to the edges. And so those are going to be my focal image. And they're going to go on top of the top card. I have a circle punched from a scrap of backdrop paper from Tim Holtz. It's got a little bit of reddish pink in it. So that's why I chose a scrap of that. And then I'm also using some of those numbers that I downloaded and printed too. I just love those, and I can see me using those a lot. So I'm just gonna arrange it all to go together. The numbers have what would be a hole where it would hang, and so I have to punch that hole out if it's going to show. And in this case, both of them will show, so I punch them out. I have a regular size punch and a tiny punch. I need something in between. So I'm starting to add my pieces to the back, and I'm going to use my regular liquid glue for that, just because it's going to have a lot more holding power. And for the top square or rectangle, I'm going to offset it slightly. Not a lot, but just so that it hangs off the right edge just a little bit, just to give it a little something to, something different. So I do that with both of them. And now I'm going to glue on the flower. And this one has to hang off the edges a little bit, and that's totally fine. Actually, I like that about it. And I'm tucking the little 3 number to kind of go underneath the flower. And this flower, I think, pretty much goes and stays in the confines of the top layer. Might go off just a tiny bit. I'm going to add a couple number strips from Tim Holtz. And once I pick out the right ones, I will add some distress ink to the edges, and I like to give them a little crease down the middle just to make them look a little older. Planted in the number strip. The last thing I'm going to do is add a couple little labels up top, and these are from my stamp set that I've got off Amazon. They're little vintage stamps, and I stuck them to some lightweight cardstock just to give them a little bit of height. Not a whole lot, just a little bit. And then of course I've trimmed them first, and then I'm just gluing them on top of the card. And that's the last thing, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. If you like what you saw, give me a thumbs up. Either way, I just hope you guys have an awesome day.